What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability, get a free price quote, and you can have me, possibly, at your next event. Entertaining you, entertaining the people. The people need to be entertained. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag, What Makes You Famous. Let's learn some stuff right here on the What Makes You Smarter program.
Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today. For Friday, March 27th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, U.S. surpasses China, Italy in total number of coronavirus cases. The number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. surged on Thursday to more than 85,000, more than any other country. The death toll in the U.S. rose to nearly 1,300, about a quarter of U.S. infections and deaths have been in New York City, while the virus appears to be spreading fastest in the New Orleans area. Italy remains the country with the highest death toll at 7,503. It has 80,589 confirmed infections, nearly as many as China, where the outbreak began. Globally, there are now more than 500,000 confirmed infections and more than 21,000 deaths. Nearly a third of the world's population is in lockdown to slow the virus's spread. This is according to the Washington Post and the Associated Press. Number 2, a record 3.3 million Americans filed for jobless benefits last week. Nearly 3.3 million Americans filed new applications for jobless benefits last week as businesses nationwide shut down or limited their operations to help slow the spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus, the Department of Labor reported Thursday. The figure smashed the old record for weekly initial jobless claims of 695,000, which was set in 1982. 2 weeks ago, only 282,000 Americans filed for their first week of unemployment benefits. In an interview Thursday morning, shortly before the release of the Labor Department's report, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said the United States, quote, may well be in a recession, end quote, already, but argued that, quote, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with our economy, end quote. So there could be a, quote, good rebound, end quote, when the COVID-19 coronavirus's spread is under control. This is according to CNN and the Associated Press. Number 3, Trump pushes to reopen low-risk regions. President Trump told U.S. governors in a letter Thursday that his administration would be releasing new guidelines on, quote, maintaining, increasing, or relaxing social distancing and other mitigation measures, end quote, for containing the coronavirus. Trump said his administration is gathering data to help set guidelines categorizing counties as, quote, high risk, medium risk, or low risk, end quote, for COVID-19 coronavirus outbreaks in the, quote, next phase, end quote, of the response. Trump this week said he wanted to adjust his initial 15-day social distancing guidelines to allow much of the shuttered economy to reopen by April 12th. The original social distancing period reaches its 15th day on Monday. Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health said increased testing could help parts of the country that haven't been hit hard to identify, test, trace, and isolate cases. This is according to NPR. Number 4, China to bar entry to most foreign nationals. China is temporarily barring foreign nationals with valid visas and residence permits from entering the country as it steps up efforts to prevent a second wave of the coronavirus outbreak, the Chinese Foreign Ministry announced Thursday. Quote, the suspension is a temporary measure that China is compelled to take in light of the outbreak situation and the practices of other countries, end quote, the statement said. The new measures apply to port visas and visa-free policies that apply to some tour groups. The COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic began with a quickly spreading outbreak in the central Chinese city of Wuhan. China recently had its first days without new person-to-person transmission of coronavirus, but it has seen an increase in the number of people entering the country after being infected abroad. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 5. Barr announces drug charges against Venezuela's Maduro. Attorney General William Barr announced Thursday that Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro had been indicted on charges that he led a decades-long drug trafficking and, quote, narco-terrorism, end quote, conspiracy. Other leaders of his government are also being charged. The charges include conspiracy to import cocaine into the U.S. Barr said Maduro and his associates colluded with a dissident faction of a demobilized Colombian guerrilla group, the FARC, quote, to flood the United States with cocaine, end quote. Maduro claimed victory in a disputed vote, but still stands as the president of Venezuela. The U.S. supports opposition leader Juan Guaido as the legitimate president. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreza said the charges were part of a desperate attempt by President Trump to boost his 2020 re-election campaign. This is according to the New York Times and Reuters. Number 6. House members rushed to Washington to avoid coronavirus relief bill delay. The House prepared for an expected Friday vote on the $2.2 trillion coronavirus relief deal, but a single lawmaker threatened to delay the process. Lawmakers had hoped that the measure would pass by a voice vote planned for 9 a.m., and many members were staying away as a safety measure due to the possibility of spreading coronavirus. But Representative Thomas Massie, Republican Kentucky, reportedly upset about what he sees as wasteful spending in the bill, threatened to demand a recorded vote. Many lawmakers are rushing to get back to Washington to make sure the House will have a quorum of 216 members if Massie demands one. Quote, if we don't have a quorum on tomorrow, we'll definitely have one by Saturday, end quote, a source told Fox News. President Trump said there might be, quote, one grandstander, end quote, but the massive stimulus will pass. This is according to NBC News and Fox News. Number 7, Gantz says he would work with Netanyahu in a surprise reversal. Benny Gantz, leader of Israel's opposition Blue and White Party, said Thursday that he would be open to serving in a government led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The announcement marked a stark reversal of Gantz's previous refusal to collaborate with Netanyahu, who faces a looming corruption trial. The rivals have finished nearly tied in 3 parliamentary elections in the last year, and neither has managed to form a governing coalition. Gantz, a former army chief, said he had changed his mind because Israel needs unity to fight the coronavirus pandemic. Quote, this is not the time for infighting and mudslinging, end quote, he said. Quote, let's join hands and get Israel out of this crisis, end quote. Gantz called for a, quote, national emergency government, end quote. The surprise decision sparked the breakup of the Blue and White Party. This is according to the New York Times. Number 8, Dow posts biggest 3-day gains since 1931. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 surged on Thursday in their third straight day of big gains. The Dow rose by 1,351.6 points, or 6.4%, capping the index's biggest 3-day increase since 1931 and leaving it up by 21% over its Monday low. Thursday's surge came despite record weekly jobless claims, in a sign of investor optimism about the $2.2 trillion coronavirus economic rescue package approved by the Senate late Wednesday. The S&P 500 was up by about 17% since Monday, but still 22% below its February 19th record high. The buying, quote, doesn't guarantee that the bottom is in, but it is indicative of a bottoming process, end quote, said Randy Frederick, Vice President of Trading and Derivatives at Charles Schwab. This is according to Reuters. Number 9, 25 sailors on U.S. aircraft carrier test positive for coronavirus. 25 sailors on the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt have tested positive for the coronavirus, a Navy official said Thursday. The Navy said it expected more cases, possibly, quote, dozens, end quote, to be confirmed. Quote, we are in the process now of testing 100% of the crew of that ship to ensure that we're able to contain whatever spread might have occurred, end quote, said Acting Navy Secretary Thomas Maudley. One official said the Defense Department was unlikely to disclose how many of the Navy's overall cases are on board the Roosevelt, which has about 5,000 people on board, to avoid giving enemies the impression the ship is vulnerable. Despite the outbreak, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Mike Gilday said the Navy is, quote, confident that our aggressive response will keep USS Theodore Roosevelt able to respond to any crisis in the region, end quote. This is according to CNN. Number 10, Globetrotters icon Curly Neal dies at 77. Former Harlem Globetrotters legend Fred Curly Neal died Thursday in Houston. He was 77. Neal, who had played in more than 6,000 exhibition games from 1963 to 1985, was easy to spot on the court due to his shaved head and playful banter. But what really made him the face of the clowning basketball team was his ball handling ability. Neal dribbled circles around opponents, often sliding on his knees without losing control. Quote, oh my gosh, he revolutionized ball handling, end quote, said Nancy Lieberman, who played for the hapless Washington Generals against the Globetrotters in 1988. Quote, everything you see Kyrie Irving doing and Steph Curry doing now, all of it started with the Trotters. The Trotters made dribbling a show, end quote. This is according to ESPN and the New York Times. That's 10 things you need to know today for Friday, March 27th, 2020. My goodness, I need some good news. Somebody drop some comments in the area below. I'll find them. I'll see them. All right. This is Keys Dan with What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.
If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.